Today is Monday, November 8th. It is 9 o'clock exactly. This special call meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. 2 items on the agenda: American Rescue Plan, what we refer to as ARPA, and then our comprehensive plan. We'll be taking a break between the two for those of you who want to be in the ARPA discussion and comprehensive plan. At this time, I've asked Commissioner Pickens to the invocation, Commissioner Adamsack to lead us in the pledge. All rise if you're able to do so.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this glorious day and all the wonders in it, Father God. We just thank you for the opportunity to gather here as commissioners and staff and concerned citizens, Father God, to discuss the ARPA funding and then our comprehensive plan, Father God. Just guide us and lead us and make us do the best decisions for Putnam County citizens. In Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Pickens, Commissioner Adamsack. Good to see everybody here today, and the Honorable Matt Reynolds is with us, so we appreciate that too. First item of business is our ARPA Funds Administration, ARPA American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA discussion. I'm going to read a little something that I wrote down. This meeting is to discuss and give guidance to the staff about the board wishes. I personally would like to use this money on infrastructure and to try to avoid social programs for waiting on future funding. Now, I know everybody's got a little difference on that, but that's just where I sit in my seat, because I think it's time to invest in Putnam County and to help our tax base go down if we can as far as taxes. Julianne, I'll open the door up for you to have a conversation.
I'll be happy to, although Sam and I are kind of jointly working on this. We provided a summary highlight of the project overview and some new additional information that we know today that we didn't know as these funds become available. I do caution you in reminding you that we only have an interim rule right now, so guides are changing daily. Allowable and non-allowable expenditures are changing daily, and so guidance is changing daily. Most recently, some of this information came from the compliance and the reporting manual that's basically laying out what has to happen for dollars that have been spent. So they've put a manual out on that. They are categorizing the use of funds into kind of 5 major categories, if you will, and those are outlined. Timeline and eligibility is March 3rd of 2021 through December 31st of 24, with the caveat that some projects may qualify for an extended timeline. There is some concern related to our ability to complete projects within that timeline based on current economic conditions, supply chains, and everything that's affecting our economy at this time. It did set forth some additional rules and requirements. All of these are going to be held to the uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements, including contracting requirements as well as procurement for the federal funding. And any subrecipient we would be a pass-through agent for any third party that we provide funding to. And there's some pretty strict and stringent rules to what is required of a board if you're going to pass through dollars to a third party. And they will go through the life of the funding as well. And then we just gave you a status update on previously discussed projects. These were only the 5 or handful that were discussed during the CIP project, not the kind of comprehensive list that was discussed during our first ARPA workshop when Sam did a PowerPoint presentation on them. And at this point, we as staff are just looking for the board to provide direction on how we can move forward with this timeline and the requirements that are required. It's going to take substantial planning on our part even to make a tangible purchase. So if I'm purchasing a commodity, in order to get through federal procurement, federal contracting, get that item in-house and move on, get it paid and reimbursed, it's going to take a substantial amount of time, and I want to caution us against delaying action at this time.
Julianne, before we go take questions from the board, just want to make it clear, just because the eligible timeline was March 3rd, we did not deposit the money until September, and that was $7.2 million.
That's correct.
So we haven't been sitting on any money.
No,
for the-
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just got the money. And again, I keep saying this, even with COVID dollars for the audience, it's a benefit. If it was my money, I could spend it today. No doubt about it. You could too. But when it comes with strings, and the strings keep changing constantly, and they might change for people that are a recipient, we might be hurting people more than we're very careful of what we're going to do. But I just wanted to make that very clear that we didn't get our money until this September. I'm going to open it up for board, and the first speaker, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, so in A through E here, there, I believe, has it changed where educational purposes are no longer a valid cost? There's things that aren't here anymore that were on the original deck. There's several things that were on the original PowerPoint you gave us, Sam, that aren't listed under A through E, in my opinion. Or maybe it's just because your wording's more broad that it,
What do you have?
there was education
So
initiatives.
education, like the ones that were discussed in the PowerPoint presentation,
Yeah,
are still eligible expenses, yes.
okay. Just because this presentation makes it look like we're limited to these 5, and we're not, that it's
Education
much
falls in
broader.
one of those categories.
So,
Those are the 5 categories established by the ARPA guidelines. So those are the 5 categories that
Okay,
the feds
then-
have established.
but so the presentation you gave before is still, the expanding of it is still accurate?
Right, the categories are
Okay.
seem very defined, but they actually have some broader,
Okay. So everything in that PowerPoint we have prior is still valid?
yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Turner.
So, Ms. Young, what y'all are looking for today basically is some kind of direction on what the board's feeling that they're wanting to do with the money. Okay, this commissioner thinks that we've, for 4 years now and longer, have tried to fund a communication system around this county. We've gone to federal funding, we've gone to state funding, we've exhausted every avenue that we can. And if we don't use this money to do some of that communications, then when one of our first responders or deputy sheriffs gets killed in the field because they can't get on the radio and talk to somebody, then it's our fault. So my first priority, this commissioner's first priority, is to fund that communication system that we've tried for 4 years now to fund. So that's my 2 cents at this point. I think that needs to be the number one thing we do, is to support our first responders and sheriff's department and whatever in this county by funding that communication system that I see no other way of funding other than out of our pocket if we don't do this. This is the only time we've come up with the money to be able to do it.
Can I ask one quick question, Chairman?
Please do.
On that front, the board did give staff authorization to move forward with an RFP so that we could get a solution to what we're going to be looking at. Staff has attempted to look at different avenues and different counties that have done one. And I believe it is in our best interest to hire a consultant to assist through that process. We had one that assisted with the last time we did a phase of it. And they bring to the table just knowledge and expertise that we frankly don't have the bandwidth to have. So I would like, if now is appropriate time, for the board to give us consensus to allow us to go ahead and engage a consultant from those ARPA funding, from the funding that is there.
I think, I have no issue with that whatsoever. In fact, I think it needs to take place.
Okay.
But a while back, I was talking to the sheriff, and he was telling me, and I think JR too, and they were telling me that somehow or another we can join up with St. Johns County and get on their system with them or something, and it would save us several $1 million over trying to do our own standalone system, and it would work adequately for what we were trying to do. And it was a several $1 million savings over the original cost of 7 to 8 million, I think it was back then. So could you maybe expand on that a little for me, JR?
Sure. The original was at almost $13 million when we first started the project. But we have gone back through and negotiated and talked about that. But I think underneath federal procurement guidelines, we can't eliminate a vendor. So the only way to do that is to send it out for an RFP and let them come back with some kind of solution back to us. If that vendor chooses to come back with that solution to us, yes, it's going to save us millions of dollars of not only upfront money, however, it also send us some reoccurring maintenance dollars that we don't have to pay maintenance on some of that equipment that St. John's did. When St. John's put theirs in, they were thinking large scale, long term, and they put a system in to be able to handle the entire state of Florida. So what this will do is this will give us the ability to do that. Also, what it helps us with is they're talking some different patching stuff, and I don't want to bore you guys to death with it, but it'll allow us to use St. Johns County's towers. It'll allow us to use Clay County's towers, and over time you could join in with Alachua and other places, and our units could talk back to our dispatchers from either Gainesville, Jacksonville, St. Johns County, wherever, they can talk back to home. So
if we can demonstrate a significant cost savings to the taxpayers, we can't single source that to match the tower, the people that have the towers. I mean, if it saves millions of dollars, we can't single source that.
Time out. In federal procurement, once you get over a certain threshold, there's no single source, there's only sole source. Sole source would mean that they're the only provider in the entire whatever that can provide radio coverage. They're not. So that's the mechanism that an RFP does, and that's really where the consultant comes in, because we need him to evaluate what's happening. So it's very possible that company A comes to the table and they don't need as much infrastructure to make our system work as company B. But in the federal guidelines, there's nothing to say company B can't discount $3 million off their price. They could lose money to sell us a product, they could, and it may make the price the same. There's nothing that says company A comes with better interoperability, meaning we communicate with St. John's and Clay, but company B may add additional components to their infrastructure to gain interoperability. And what the feds want to know is that you didn't exclude either one of them from day one. If we weren't using federal dollars, yes, local and state guidance allows for single source, but feds are only, they call it their single sole, but it's a sole source definition. So thus the process that we are going to be required to go through for the federal dollars is laborious. It is for all of these procurements. That's one of the reasons.
Do you have to go through the whole process for the RFP to get a consultant?
I do not, because the Fed's threshold for that is $250,000, and this would fall well under that, which means you overlay your local and state procurement guidelines onto that. This particular consultant already has numerous reports about our infrastructure and our systems, and so they are a single source procurement. And I know that I just really probably confused you, but,
No, you didn't.
okay, so in our local
Monday,
guidance.
I'm pretty good on Monday.
Okay, good. In our local guidance, because there is an added value to not having to start new with a consultant who we'd have to pay to go get all the report information this one already has, we do have a valid single source procurement in this particular arena.
Have you reached out to them yet, or the consultant, or is it, are you waiting on our direction first?
I believe that Mr. JR has had some hypothetical and budgetary conversations, but there has been no contact from the procurement department to that consultant until we get some board direction.
Okay, I think I'm done for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Adams, you had your light on earlier? Okay. I have a question then.
Okay.
Concerning, because communication towers are big for me, and when I first got here, I heard that deputy who could not talk from right down the road here, where I kind of grew up at. The problem is, I guess the question is, can we design the system? We can't exclude anybody, but we can design it where we want to say we want it to be integrated with St. John's, Clay. We can do that, can't we?
Correct. We have our minimum expectations, which is interoperability with St. Johns County, with Clay County, with.
Well, because I
whatever
said
else.
this, I said it in my opening statement, Commissioner Turner said it, this is something that would be on the taxpayer's back if we didn't have funding for it. This is an opportunity for us to make good on communications, which we should be about. And I want to do it right the first time. I know it's going to be an expensive process, but if we can save by doing that, I want to take the one bite of the apple on this and get it right the first time. Is that how you feel too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we could define our scope of this is what we're looking for, right?
Yeah, just to give you some clarity, when they run their coverage maps across the county, you know, we've been talking to several different vendors. We're getting about, with our current tower setup configuration the way we are, we get 99% countywide mobile coverage. You're not going to see 100. They're not going to do it because it's just, you know, you get underneath one tree and you don't talk, then the systems fail. But they've given us 99% countywide mobile, the one in the car coverage across the county. When we ran the maps with the St. John's integration, it gave us 97% portable coverage at hip height and like residential structures across the county, which is what we mainly do our business in, is residential, whether it be the police, fire, whatever's in residential. It's a little bit less than that on commercial, such as Walmart, Georgia Pacific. But the good part about here around town is we're really drowned with coverage because of the location of the towers. We're going to see in our Georgia Pacific areas and places like that better than expected coverage because of the amount of tower sites we have in what I want to call the greater Palatka area, including San Mateo, Bostwick.
Thank you, JR. I got Mr. Bill Pickens.
Yeah, when I first heard we would receive some of this money, the first thing I thought of was a communication system, because we've been trying to get this, you know, taken care of through the 5 years that I've been here, and we've just not been able to fund it. So that's probably number one on my list also. So JR, I mean, do you have an idea what it will cost?
We've got some, I don't really know right off the gate. I don't know if I can, we've talked preliminary, but I wouldn't want to give you a number that they can't hold true to yet until we see what comes back on RFP.
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, Mr. Rawls, I think you were next, because
Yes.
So we were told $5 to $6 million 2 years ago. When CARES Act money came out, $5 million would have funded it. Is that number out the window now? We're talking a lot more, a lot less.
How far can I don't know how far I can go with, because I mean, they both give us some preliminary numbers. I just don't want to do anything against our,
I'll take it all. What do you have?
I mean,
What are the preliminary numbers?
I don't think we should make numbers public right now until we go out for bid.
Probably just be guessing too.
it's really a guess. Because I mean, we don't really know what they've given us some budgetary numbers. They range anywhere, I mean, from $6 to $9 million total to build the system out.
So we have money set aside in Better Place. That's recurrent revenue. We're here to talk about ARPA money. I personally feel like, and I said at the last meeting, we should set aside at least 55% for the public, and then the other 45% for government. I don't have a problem paying for part of the communication system if out of the ARPA money, as long as the lion's share goes to public, because the lion's share last time with the CARES Act money went to the government when there was money to pay for what we paid for. So I feel like we missed an opportunity to do right by the public on the last round. This round, I think we should step up, set aside a majority of the money for the public, and then have a conversation that we're having about communication later, because this really is not germane to the conversation at hand.
Mr. Turner?
Well, let me start by saying that I don't agree with that at all, because I don't think anybody agreed to any percentages as of any meeting. But I want to step back to the discussion that we were having. Will the consultant that we talked to, I was told not too long ago that if we're successful in our broadband initiative, where we have full access broadband to every nook and cranny of Putnam County, that it could possibly completely change the way that we communicate now through emergency services. That they might be like a VoIP type thing. I don't know that, but would this consultant, it would break my heart that we take $8 million of this money and pour it in a new communication system and the damn thing's obsolete in 3 months. That would break my heart. So what I'd like to know is would this consultant have the ability to tell us that if we hold off another 6 months and we poured all the money into broadband infrastructure, would that eliminate the problem or not? I guess that's my question. I just don't want to put up a bunch of if you allow me.
I do.
Mr.
Go right
Chairman,
ahead.
Not a few years ago, a company came through town and they hung a bunch of broadband equipment all over the county, and it was like middle mile provider stuff. Yeah, middle mile provider stuff. And so you had first mile provider that was the Comcasts of the world, and you had the center mile, which was this company, and then you had an end user, which was the end mile. And by the time they got it put up, everybody had figured out how to do it and make it work slick. And so they put it up and everything worked. Within 2 years, it was all obsolete, and the company went away. The equipment went back to the USDA, and by the time we figured out who owned the equipment from the USDA, that we might could get our hands on it and start operation of the middle mile again, we found out the equipment was obsolete, and it'd been 2 or 3 years only. My biggest concern here in this situation, having said that, is that we put in the communications tower, we do it with technology that's been around for a few years, and then we get full-blown broadband throughout the county, which would be my next thing that I'd want to do past communication would be to get solid broadband everywhere in the county, then solid affordable broadband everywhere in the county. And then all of a sudden we don't need all these towers anymore, because somebody could go on a system and use that broadband capabilities, and we've just basically put all this money in a system that became obsolete when that happened. So
Yeah, so again, I haven't had any direct conversation with the consulting group, but I have researched their firm enough to know that their expertise is in both public system communications and broadband. So we could have a conversation with them about how or if our infrastructure and future broadband build out is going to overlap, and if there are any, I guess, economies of scale that we would pick up by doing some initiatives maybe for broadband with our communications tower, or we leave some out because the broadband is then gonna pick up where we don't. We could have that
I just wanna make sure we
conversation.
have that conversation, because I don't know if anybody's using that anywhere yet, or if it's just a concept or what, but somebody else brought this to me the other day and said that they assumed that broadband was one of our highest priorities along with the communications tower, and that they said that this was somebody that has some abilities in the technological realm, and basically they said that there's a chance that both of these cover one another, that if you get solid broadband and everywhere in the county that's accessible, no matter where a first responder is, that it may be that's the answer. I don't know that. I'm a contractor from San Mateo, but it seems to me like it's very smart that we look into that, that we, if we had, let's say, for instance, just throwing numbers in the air, that this is gonna cost 7 million or 8 million or whatever number you'd like to use, and we decide to go on and fund that, and then we find out in 2 months that if we'd have put that 7 or 8 million in broadband, there's not a citizen in this county that wouldn't touch their life if we were able to give them solid broadband, affordable, solid broadband in every nook and cranny of the county. And if we could use that system to let the sheriffs and the EMS do what they needed to do, then we've solved both of them with one chunk of money. That's why I want to look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Normally, emergency services, their networks are segregated from the general public's network. Usually it's different technology. There's a reason for that. It's so that you don't have the reason for that is exactly the reason why the economies of scale possibly won't work. I'm all for if we get a consultant to look at this to see if it does, but normally they use a different bandwidth, they use a different infrastructure. Even in big cities where they have the networks, they still are on a separate system. So I don't know, maybe that's feasible. If it's a question we can ask, for sure. I don't see how the two are exactly integrated. Now, if you have more towers that you need to get broadband everywhere, and you put the extra equipment on the same towers, I think that's where maybe you see some economy of scale. Just for this conversation, I don't know if I am for this conversation for ARPA, but as this conversation goes, I just want to give that input.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. So what's on the table right now, basically, is we need to, Julian, you and Mr. Suggs are looking for, do we want to go ahead and hire the consultant to come in and do that?
Yes, sir.
And I think that's, even though the board approved it, we still need to go forward with it at this point, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think that's, the chair will entertain a motion if we want to continue, we want to go through a consultant and get that cleaned up.
Is this for ARPA or for communication?
ARPA for the communication system upgrade, using ARPA dollars.
I move that we instruct staff to hire a consultant and move forward with the communication system.
Okay, Mr. Turner made the motion,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Pickens. Any further discussion on the
And
motion?
the motion is to pay for this out of the ARPA funding?
It is. Mr. Adamczak, you have the floor, sir.
Do we have a not to exceed number or anything on this? Is there?
Right now, all we've done is just asked her to hire a consultant.
Yeah, for the consultant. I mean,
There isn't one, but I know that the chairman and administrator have authority up to 65,000. You can, it's up to you if you'd like to set a cap or how you want to handle that.
I don't know what one
I'm,
costs.
so this commissioner isn't for doing any decisions on ARPA money until such a time that we have the public meetings that we talked about. That was in the discussion. So my assumption, when the motion to accept the money, there was discussion about having public meetings throughout the county in at least 3 different locations. We haven't had that yet. I'd like to get public input from different locations, and I think the communications tower, the public may get behind that, and I think that may be a viable thing, and I think there's a lot of other viable options for ARPA. But we haven't had those meetings, and I haven't pushed for monthly town halls because I thought we were gonna have some meetings that would interfere with them. These meetings on ARPA, the meetings possibly on the budget that didn't happen, that I was hoping we could have done in evenings throughout the county. Meetings on the comprehensive plan. I mean, this really should go out to the public as well. So I'm gonna be a no vote on any dedication money until we have those meetings. Thank you.
Mr. Adamczak, I'll be talking about 2 meetings on 2 dates, right here in just a moment on that, in different ends of the county. Mr. Rawls?
I agree with Commissioner Adamczak. I thought we were here to talk about the ARPA money. This is kind of shifting to somewhat different. I personally would be a no vote until we do have the conversations. I think we do need to get a plan set aside before we start spending money. We've already allocated money out of ARPA, but I think that we really need to do right by the public and get our plan in order before we just start spending it, because it's going to disappear and then we won't have anything at all.
Yeah, we have $7.2 million. We're talking about hiring a consultant. We have a proper motion, proper second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose like sign.
Aye.
Okay, passes 3-2. Do want to, while we're at this point in the meeting, do want to make mention, would like to look at going out in the public on the 15th of this month and the 22nd. Those are 2 Mondays. Already reserved the town of Interlaken for the 15th at 6 p.m. Okay, that will be done in the Interlaken Town Hall for anyone that can make it. And Commissioner Pickens, I'd like for you to reach out and see if you could find a location on the 22nd in the Crescent City area, if that's appeasable by the board. Okay,
Are we planning one in the city of Plaquemine or anywhere in the greater Plaquemine area?
we're here in the city now.
For an evening meeting.
I haven't planned on anything in the evening other than those 2 outline areas.
Well, are we having a meeting with the city of Plaquemine anytime soon?
They were going to get back to me and never did, so, yeah.
The city has their own ARPA funding.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of overlap that we could also team up on in the greater Plaquemine area.
Okay, so
What you said was Monday the 15th at what time?
6 p.m. At the Interlaken Town Hall.
And then also
22nd,
the
if we could
22nd.
do- If we can find a location in the Crescent City or South Putnam area.
Okay, now is this just a general town hall meeting, or is it gonna be focused on ARPA?
ARPA funds only.
Okay.
Yeah. And taking what we see, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Commissioners, there's a couple more things. Purchase of 2 ambulances are eligible, Parks and Recreation field lighting. what's your pleasure about going forward at this point on those?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Turner, you may.
I don't think those are right now drop dead, got to have them today, emergency items like the communication system is. That's why I was very interested in seeing it move forward at this time. I don't see why we can't hold off on the ambulances until after these 2 meetings that you just called.
Okay.
And so, and see what's happening at those meetings and let the public have some input. The number one thing to me was the communication system, and the number 2 thing to me is broadband. My next thing in line was the water and sewer in East Palaca, but I understand by listening to what was just passed at the federal level on Friday, is that money, part of it's gonna be earmarked for water and sewer systems. So that took that priority out of this tranche of money. It took that and moved it into a later tranche of money. Even though we already have areas lined up where we'd like to do it and move next and what have you. I don't think we have to worry about it out of this bunch of money. I think it can be the next section of money. So anyhow, I don't know that we shouldn't maybe hold off on those until we have those couple of meetings. It's not gonna take as long as what the communication system is to get those.
Thank you. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think this may be the time to do some more upgrades. We've already approved some money for Parks and Recs, but this might be the time to go ahead and take care of some of those facilities with lighting and maybe upgrades of bathroom facilities and stuff like that. I do agree that if we can have these 2 meetings and come back and have another meeting to discuss how we move further. And I'm not opposed. I'd like to look at, because I know there's some people in this audience that are looking for maybe getting some money for their particular charities or organizations. So I'm not opposed of maybe looking at some of that money for that, either the first round or the second round, so.
All right, good. Commissioners, I want to bring up one more item. A few weeks ago, Sam brought us a list of items that basically, kind of a wish list, if you would. I would like to instruct staff to go back to department heads. They kind of have a list of items now, but if we could get that list, if we're in agreement as a board, to get that list and bring it back to tomorrow's workshop meeting real quick, before we take the show on the road, if you will. What I'd like to do is be able to, as Mr. Rawls says, listen to our staff a lot. In this case, maybe it's time that, well, I know it's time that we look at things we can do internally also and externally. Don't get me wrong, I'm full agreement of that too, but look at what our staff really could do under maybe some of the eligibility of ARPA. Remember that there is a flexibility bill that's still hanging out there that hasn't been passed yet, and that flexibility bill would give us more flexibility if the name is kind of, but who knows when that's coming, so we'll see about that. But is staff, is the board in agreement to bring that wish list back to, not a wish list, it's a needs list, back to workshop tomorrow?
You saying for tomorrow?
Yes, just for a real quick conversation? Then we can have something
I
to
don't
take
have a
back.
problem with it, but we still need to get the public's involvement.
That's what we'll do, we'll go out in the public.
So
and
that'll
say,
go with, on the Monday night meetings, we'll have that to
that list
refresh.
will go
Okay.
with us, yeah. Mr. Pickens, how do you feel?
I'm good, yeah.
Mr. Adams, aye?
So my only concern with that is if we go out with a big list of things that comes from the county commission, the county staff, and a lot of times people in the public feel like they're not being heard because we're coming at them with a big list of our own instead of just listening. I would like to take the opportunity of these meetings to listen and then bring that back, then develop the list combined with what we listen and hear with what we're suggesting. We already have, if we did the communications thing, that's most of the budget. So we already have one thing for the list that we just heard, if estimates of 7 to 9 million. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, whatever. That's all the money. So why do we want to add more government wish lists when the object is to go listen to what the people want? I just don't see the purpose, if we're talking about moving forward with communications, of adding more to our list when we should be listening to the community for their list. That's the
Well, I
purpose of the
apologize
meeting.
for saying wish list. It's actually a needs list. And anytime we can use somebody else's money to accomplish the needs, that reduces the burden on the taxpayer.
It's still taxpayers' money, it's not somebody else's
So
money.
what I'd like, I don't think it hurts us to have something out there, and I think if people really want us to hear from them on their project, they'll let us know.
Also,
Yeah, Mr. Turner?
I also think that it's very important when we have these meetings for the public to understand that it's not just a bunch of money that's sitting there to be spent on whatever we want to spend it on. It's an opportunity for this county to try and get ahead with a lot of the projects that they've tried to do in the past and could not fund. Whether they're important as some other project, that remains to be seen, but it's projects that have been wanted to be done for many, many years around here. I feel like that if we could have a list showing some of the things that are necessary, somebody's got to buy a new ambulance, somebody's got to buy a new fire truck, so you can either raise fees, raise taxes, raise more money, or you can pay for it out of ARPA funding and save the citizens the tax raise, save them the everyday money. And if I talked in a room with 50 people, I bet you 45 of them would go along with the idea they'd rather pay less taxes than they would to fund something that may be well, but it doesn't affect their everyday life. And so, you know, I think that having a list of needs within the county, and I think it needs to be a real list with the things on it that we've talked about here today, not just the fire trucks and the ambulances and the what have you, but also things on that list like other things that would be necessary in the county that's gonna have to be done one day or another, either through local taxpayer dollars or that's gonna have to be done with this ARPA funding, one or the other. So instead of just vehicles and things like that, emergency vehicles, I think that we also need to put other things on there that are gonna be substantial too, that are very important. You know, it's easy for us to sit around here, which we've done for 6 months now, and talk about making the water and sewer system sustainable. But if we're not willing to take the step to make it sustainable, it's not gonna ever be sustainable. And so, you know, at some point, we've got to take, like I said earlier, not this tranche of money, but definitely the next tranche of money and use it towards some of that infrastructure. That'll save the taxpayers money around here for years and years and years to come. So I guess that's my point in trying to use this ARPA funding wisely, is fund things with it that would serve the citizens of the county and in the future, and help them have lower taxes and lower fees on different things while still getting the things that Putnam County needs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Adams.
It was all beautiful conjecture, but everything you just talked about probably costs around $30 million, not $7 million, if you count infrastructure as far as communications tower and broadband, all the things that we've talked about. So we have $7-point-something million to do something with.
14.
I'm talking about this year, so $14-point-something million, you're talking about double that, and that's not counting what we hear. I don't know, I just want to hear from the community, and I would love for it to be without our hand on it, which is how I feel it goes a lot of times, because we present this presentation that makes people feel like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that because the county needs it, when people have their own needs that they want to express. And a lot of times in any situation for any human being, when you get someone that presents needs, and you're saying we want to sell to the public the needs that we want, and it overrides their ambition for what they're looking for themselves. And like I said, if it wasn't ARPA money, if it wasn't money that has the ability to be used for these alternative uses, if it was just general money, I would not support doing things for the public sector the same way I would with ARPA money, or we should have done it with CARES money. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Rawls?
You know how you cut it up? This is being funded by tax dollars. The chickens will come home to roost, and we will pay for this money that we've received from the federal government. It's not free money. The biggest string that's attached to it is that it will be paid back in some fashion or form, either by us or by our children or our grandchildren or great-grandchildren. You know, it really hit me hard when I realized how much money we spent ourselves out of the CARES Act when we are fully funded by the taxpayers themselves. Our budget was funded. We didn't have to increase anything. Matter of fact, we decreased work hours at some point during COVID. What would happen if COVID had not hit Putnam County? That's a question that I keep asking people. We wouldn't be having this conversation about CARES Act money. But when COVID hit, the community got hit in a different way. People lost their jobs, they were idled, they couldn't go to work, didn't get paychecks, couldn't pay rent, couldn't pay mortgages, couldn't pay their debt obligations, couldn't buy groceries maybe. Saw an increase in substance abuse, saw an increase in domestic violence. I think we need to focus on fixing the community. We're fully funded. We just passed a balanced budget. I don't know why we need to keep going in and grabbing all this cash and not doing something right for the public. I think the broadband conversation is probably the most important conversation that this commission will have over the next couple of years. It's an initiative in Washington. It's an initiative in the state. Everybody's got their eye on that football. But I think right now we need to focus on getting the ARPA money conversation started, getting our plan laid out, and then fully supporting the folks in the community that can do things that we are supposed to do by our charge by the governor. We're charged with responsibility of public safety. We're charged with the responsibility of hospitalization as well, and we don't do a good job of that. So I think we really need to take a look at what we're doing, slow the roll a little bit, not be looking at buying fire trucks and ambulances and lights for ball fields and bathrooms. We have other more important items that need to be taken care of right now. Those things are already funded in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rawls. And we're not going to put our finger on the scale. We are going to go out in the public and hear. I think it's a good thing to hear from our staff. So I have consensus from at least 3 of us. Is there anybody else to go ahead and bring that list back to the workshop tomorrow? So I think that would be good. All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break. Order. And we are going to be taking public comments after our comprehensive plan. Mr. Adamczak, you had a question you had to ask?
Just because I didn't realize we were ending ARPA, that's kind of abrupt, but I still think we need to have an evening meeting here in Palaca. I mean, we're not just talking about Palaca proper. We're talking about Hollister, we're talking about Bostwick, we're talking about Barden, we're talking about people in East Palaca, we're talking about people out in Penn Isle, we're talking about a lot of the community that is not in West Putnam or South Putnam that deserve their opportunity to have an evening meeting, specifically on ARPA, that they don't have to wait till after the comprehensive plan discussion to have their public comment, that they're focused on this. And they deserve to have whatever we put together here for tomorrow's meeting presented to them in an evening meeting, just like the other parts of the community. So I'd like to see us do a meeting on maybe the 29th then, here in the building or somewhere out in Palaca or East Palaca, wherever your choosing is, that's more central in the county to cover where the masses of our population are.
Thank you. Mr. Ross?
I was just saying, we've got a lot of folks in the audience that.
You're not on.
I'm sorry, looks like we have a lot of folks in the audience that wanted to speak regarding ARPA. I think in the interest of their time, it might be better to let them speak now before we go into moving on with the comp plan. That way we don't burn up any more of their day. And I just reached out to the mayor by text and asked him if they were interested in having a meeting. He said nobody. He said, who did you reach out to? I said, Larry had reached out to y'all with no response. He said, he wants to know who you reached out to.
Him and I had the conversation. We were supposed to talk. He left the meeting early.
Okay.
That's fine. Just, guys, if you don't mind, we do have an agenda, and the agenda items are for agenda items on public comment and miscellaneous. It won't take us long to get through the comp plan, so if it's okay with the board, we'll continue on. Gabriel, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
All of the comprehensive plan text revisions are shown in comments to the right in the first part of your binder. So the bubbled comments in the right margin. Revisions were made to ensure consistency with changes made to other elements, to comply with DEO's comment letter issued in July, and to comply with Florida statutes. Additionally, certain maps in the future land use map series were revised to make revisions as requested by DEO, correct outdated labels, and correct errors on the future land use map. I will quickly go through DEO's, the gist of DEO's comments and how they were addressed. The first comment.
Gabriel?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to set this meeting, and I mean, I don't want to rush through it, but at the same time, we've seen those comments from DEO. We've seen the revisions of that. I think that we could do it kind of like we did before, and if there's any questions from commissioners, we can go page by page. But me personally, I have none.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask, Mr. Turner's got his light on, so he'll ask you a question right now, okay?
I have a couple of things. On page 28 of the future land use map, the future land use element, we were trying to wipe all references to Ag 1 and 2 out. So on the very first line of that page, there's another Ag 1 in there. It should just be, the 1 should be gone.
Yes, sir. I'll make that
Okay.
revision. Thank you for catching that.
Also, the heart of the whole change in the comprehensive plan and the difference between several points of view on the comprehensive plan were the density issue. I understand that DEO came back with the comment that on our density, and so we basically, to answer that comment, what we did was completely changed what we were trying to do to start with, which was allow somebody, if they own 5 acres of land with access out in the country, that they were able to build their house on 5 acres of land. I understand the part of this that people on the environmental arm of the county, the environmental side arm of the county made the comment, well, that's urban sprawl. I don't agree with that. I think urban sprawl is when you start putting subdivisions all over the county, not when you allow somebody that owns 5 acres of land out in the country to build a house. Now, What we did was we left the 5-acre density in there, but we said that they had to be on a paved road or abutting a paved road. That's on page 27B. So basically what we did was we put it in there that they had to be on a paved road in order to use their 5 acres. If we're gonna leave that in there, then at the very least, either in this or in the land development code, whichever is appropriate, I want it clear that someone could seek a special use permit or a variance to go down to 5 acres when it's appropriate. If someone owns 5 acres of land and their family owns the 1,000 acres of land around it, we shouldn't tell them they can't build a house on on that 5 acres they own in the middle of a lot of other land. I don't think that's right. I just don't think that's right. I think that we need to make sure that we don't preclude somebody from being able to do that, at least by variance, at least then they have an avenue to get to there if they wanted to. Personally, I think if you own 5 acres of land, you ought to be able to build a house on it. I don't care where it is if you have good access. Now, I don't mean that you drive through two swamps to get to it and with a mud buggy only. But if you're on a county-maintained road, if we could change that from a paved road to a county-maintained road, that would help. We have a lot of county-maintained roads that are good enough to build one house in 5 acres on. So I just want to make sure we're not precluding people from being able to build on their property. It's not everybody's dream to have a 1/4 acre lot in a subdivision. That's not everybody's dream. Some people's dream are 5 or 10 acres out in the country. That's a lot of people's dream. So I don't want to be known as a dream killer with our comp plan. I don't. So I think we need to change this around in such a way that will allow people to utilize 5 acres in the country to build one dwelling unit, which is what the whole idea was. And if it needs to be done through a variance to make DEO happy, or on a county-maintained road instead of in here it says on a paved road, maybe we could change that to a county-maintained road, perhaps. So that's just my 2 cents.
What if it was a private road? I mean, I
Well-
think as long as they have accessibility to their property,
I
you
don't
know.
disagree with
Yeah.
that, but DEO came back
I know.
with the comment, so we've got to do something. We've got to reach a compromise here of some sort to make DEO pass our comprehensive plan revisions. So, do I like it? No, I don't like it at all. I like the first version that we sent to them, and I think we voted on it pretty much unanimously, except for the data issue. So I'm having real heartburn with this. I know we've got to do something to satisfy DEO, but I don't think that we need to throw the whole reasoning for changing out, the basic reasoning for changing the comp plan, which was to allow someone to build on their 5 acres of property out in the country. So we need to open that up and not at least make it where we don't preclude them.
Gabriel, you have a
Mr.
solution?
Yes, sir. The changes that we proposed would not change that at all. The density stays at 1 to 5 on a paved road. The only thing that was changed with regard to density in the agricultural area is that now new platted subdivisions would be restricted to 1 to 10. But everyone else, lot splits, family subdivisions, type 2 subdivisions, which are large lot subdivisions, could, in theory, go down to 1 to 5 if they were on a paved road and if they had not split.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
My point is, I don't think it should just be on a paved road. I think it should be on a county-maintained road with an option to seek a variance if they're on a private road. In other words, if somebody owned 5 acres of land out in the middle of their family's 1,000 acres, they're not gonna be on a paved road or on a they're gonna be on a private road that goes through their family property to their piece. We should not preclude them from being able to build a house on their 5 acres out in the middle of their property. And it doesn't have to be 1,000, it could be 40 acres, and they're just not on a paved road, but they're on a county-maintained road. They grew up without a road at all, you know, so that doesn't bother them so much if they had a lane that went into their house or whatever. So at the very least, I want to make sure that we have an option for them to go ask ZBOA or somebody and present their case. Tell them you can't do it no matter what, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. I believe in giving them the option to go before the ZBOA and present their case and say, my family owns 100 acres. My grandfather left, and I'm making all this completely up. My grandfather left me 5 acres out in the middle of this, but I'm not on a paved road and I'm not on a county road. I've got to drive through my grandfather's own property on a deeded easement to get to my 5 acres. What we did was just preclude him from being able to build a house on that 5 acres.
So, Mr. Chairman, we can, if I may, we can make that change to county maintained. Just to clarify, that was not a change that was made now. That was a change that was in there from the very start of the comp plan. So, if there's consensus of the board, I can go ahead and make
Mr. Rawls, you have a question about that?
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Can we stay on topic and I'll get right back to you?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
on topic, yeah.
Mr. Adamczak, you have a question about that? topic?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Is there a way, I mean, I like the idea of being able to do it without it having to go to ZBOA. Is there a way to word that where it says county or deeded access? To allow that situation that the grandfather leaves 5 acres out in the middle, or to be able to not have to go to ZBOA for something that should be pretty untrivial? I mean, that's, to me, it seems like a simple,
So we can, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we
or
can.
non-landlocked, however, whatever the wording needs to be.
We can change it to county-maintained road, and that would include deeded access, because the deeded access will have to front on a county-maintained road.
So having a deeded easement, if I may,
You may,
so having a deeded easement to a county-maintained road would count as far as you're concerned about letting them go and build a house on their 5 acres?
So for family subdivisions, there's a requirement for a 66-foot wide deeded easement for all of the lots with a cul-de-sac, and then for a lot split, they can do up to 2 lots, including the parent parcel.
Okay, well,
On
I
a-
guess
on
I
an
need to
easement.
get the family part out of it. Bad example. I bought 5 acres that was surrounded by other people, by a 100-acre piece, but not family, okay?
Right.
But it has a deeded easement from my 5 acres out to a county-maintained road. Can I
Private
build a house?
driveway,
Huh?
private driveway,
Private driveway.
make it easier.
Yes, sir.
I still build my house on that 5 acres of land without going under the current definition.
Certainly. That would be considered a lot of record if it was legally created. It depends on, the code currently grandfathers lots that were legally created prior to the adoption of the code and prior to the adoption of the original comprehensive plan.
Is
So-
there some way that we could word that in this paragraph that wouldn't leave that open to interpretation? Because us in this room today get it all hammered out, and the next planning director or the next guy, he doesn't interpret it the same as we do. And then I've seen this for 35 years now. I mean, since the early 90s when I was on the planning commission. Half of the stuff that was discussed in that room on the first comprehensive plan when we wrote it was not what's going on today, because every new planning director has a different interpretation on the words on the paper. So could we make that a little less open to interpretation?
So in the land development code, it's my opinion that it's very clear currently as it's written. I would caution making too many changes at this stage in the adoption phase, because we may get objections from DEO later on, and it could throw the whole thing into.
As long as what we put in here is not gonna preclude us from being able to do what we want to do in the land development code.
Correct.
If the comp plan says you can't do this, then you can write everything you want in your land code. You can't do it if your
Correct.
comp plan says you can't do it. So I want to make sure that we don't put anything in here that precludes us from being able to write the things that we want to write in the land development code.
Correct.
And so I just want to make sure this is crystal clear and not open to interpretation, that you can build your house on 5 acres of land out in the country.
Yes, sir. And as the land development code is written right now, you could do that as well. Once this goes into effect, you could have a lot split if it has not been split before, or another type of minor subdivision, not a platted one. And that would not require a revision of the land development code.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question real quick, please, just for clarification for staff and for the board? Gabriel, what I heard during that dialogue was that you used the word grandfathered. I want to make sure that that doesn't mean that anything that wasn't already a platted lot or a cut-out piece of property that we currently have, I want to make sure that we're able to do this moving forward after the adoption of the plan. I think that is critical for what the commissioner is wanting to make sure that we do not do, is adopt a plan today that says, well, that lot wasn't developed until after the adoption, so we're not able to do that. I don't like the word grandfathered in this particular instance. I want to make sure that the commissioners are getting exactly what they're asking for.
Correct. If that lot was created legally, then you could build on it currently, even without this comprehensive plan. Even a 1 acre lot in ag right now, if it was created legally at some point, then you would be able to build on it.
And even after the adoption?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Rawls, you have the floor.
Are we doing that? Okay.
You
So,
have the floor, sir.
you know, I don't like this comp plan. I don't like the way we got to it. I wish we could throw it out and start from scratch. And my question to you is, what happens if we were to consider doing that?
If you were to consider, if I may, Mr.
Starting from
Chairman.
scratch, starting over.
We would just have to put out the request for proposal again and,
Because this is not
Go through.
supported by any data, and we've had a massive shift over the past 12 months. While this was being looked at over the past 18 months, we've had a big shift.
Mr. Rawls,
Huh?
we kind of set the stage where we're going to take one item at a time. Do you have anything based on this information right now? And we're going to get through one at a time here.
I'm just
I know you
saying,
don't
yeah,
like the data, you never have,
right.
but
So
I doubt
it-
we're going to throw it out. But
Well,
to the point of what we're talking about, the conversation now. do you have-
everything ties to each other. Hear me out here. Our transportation, our housing, future land use. I tried looking at the future land use maps that were sent out on the screen. I can't tell, did we set aside any R3? Are we getting ready for the future? You know what I'm saying? And that's what people are coming in asking for now. So I have a different vantage point as a builder, where literally every week we're turning away work, people wanting us to build housing right now. We're overbooked. So we have a lot of need, a lot of people moving in the community. And when you start looking at transportation element, it ties to housing basically, because it talks about income levels, and your housing is tied to that. But what isn't addressed, oddly enough, and I think we should address it, is the folks that are going to be your 80 to 120% of median income, because they're really fixing to get hit hard with what's happening in the economy right now. And we can't stop the $15 an hour minimum wage adjustment. It talks about how we're going to address poverty and try to reduce that, and focus on affordable housing and workforce housing and all that. So I just wonder if it's not in our best interest to slow things down a little bit, take another bite at this apple, and do it using current data, not stuff from 15 and 16 and 14.
Okay, does anybody else have any items they want to bring up on this? Because we will be this is where we're going to take from the public today, and then we'll be bringing it back, from my understanding. Mr. Adams, that?
Back to the prior thing, just reading through this, maybe just changing the 5 acre for parcels abutting and say, or having direct access to a paved road or to a county maintained road. Because that gives you the private roads have access to county maintained. So just add the word or. instead of abutting and having direct access to a county-maintained road, change paved road to county-maintained road. So abutting or having direct access to a paved road, or county-maintained road. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that establishes if you have an easement across a lot that's on a county-maintained road,
I
you have a
appreciate
private road, like, I live on a private road that reaches a county-maintained road.
There you go.
Did you catch that, Gabriel?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay. Is there anything else that the commissioners, any other items the commissioners want to speak about? As far as I think you did a really good job. But you are going to make those changes. They'll bring those back to us, and then we'll vote on that at another future date, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
When would we vote on that?
That would be tentatively right now, the second meeting in November. So that's the 23rd.
Okay. So
3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now.
And I believe that's a 5:05.
Yes, sir.
okay. Good.
I just,
All right.
very interested in trying to get this moving on. We've been working on it for a couple of years.
I agree.
And we can't really start our land development code until we get our comp plan pretty much finalized, because we don't know what to put in it.
I agree.
So,
All right. Then we'll see you that day. Mr. Rawls, you have a question?
Will there come a point in time when we see current data?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the data for this comprehensive plan will not change. It might change during an ear amendment, but aside from that, the evaluation and appraisal report that happens every 7 or 5 years, I can't remember now, but for right now, that data will remain the same. But it's not my suggestion that you adopt the data. It's not normally done, so the data simply supports the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is what's adopted.
But so if we're asked to vote on something that we know is fouled, how does that work?
that
I
we
think-
know is what?
We know the data is flawed. I said fouled, flawed.
Did you hear what he just said? He said that don't
He said
adopt data.
this was based on the data.
He said don't adopt the data, and then the
Right.
data will keep flowing to support.
But my question is, we had very old data that this was generated on. What does that do for us? Because at some point, the data will be published with this, correct?
It's already been published.
Right,
The data is currently published.
and it's no good.
Well, it is what it is, right?
I know, but we can stop the process right now, hire a consultant that will actually do the work, get current data, especially today, and have a look at what we're facing in the future. This is a 15-year document. And I know we could turn around next year and revise it, or we can go through another comp plan amendment, but why would we purposely go through knowing that it's flawed and push this thing forward? That's been my question since day one. to be
Commissioner, you
honest.
can always push a consultant to do that. We can always update data at your
I mean,
convenience.
we paid them $40-something thousand for the data, and they didn't do it.
All right, any other further questions? We're going to move on. Thank you, Gabriel, for that. I appreciate it. We're going to have a public comment now. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It's not reasonable to expect the board will engage in debate or deliberations about matters unless the board has received no prior information for this agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We're going to break it up in 2 segments. One on ARPA funding. Want to hear from those people first, because we have kept you here a little bit longer than I intended, and then we'll hear from comp plan people. So if you want to speak in the ARPA, so we have, that's comp plan and that's ARPA. Thank you very much. First speaker, Mr. Ed Killebrew. Good morning, Mr. Killebrew.
Good morning. Ed Killebrew, 146 Barden Estates Circle. I guess I'm going to sound like a monkey running around with a cymbal doing the same tune. But I spoke with each and every one of y'all individually. Wanted to speak to the board, to the administration, everybody that's involved about the ARPA funding. At Epicure, we are looking to get $450,000, $450,000. We have a person, an organization that's willing to pay the other half of our warehouse that we're trying to purchase if the county can come up with the money to help us purchase this half. Last week alone, this past Friday, we served 750 families. That's if you go to a family, 3 to 4 people a family. What's that? 2,800, something like that. People that we served on Friday, and that's got to be every Friday. We dipped for a while. We were somewhere around 300 or 400 families. But then the price of gasoline, the price of food, the price of everything going up has driven these families back to us. This past Friday, the 750 families that we served was small in comparison because of the rain and the wind and everything. It kept people, but we still had 750 families out there to come get food. Frankly, myself personally, and I know where your hearts are. I mean, I've spoke to several of you about your hearts. I know where your hearts are, and I know that the business end of the stick doesn't always go to your hearts. I know that taxpayers are saying, well, I'd rather go fund this than feed people. I've spoke to some of y'all and told you I'm kind of a moderate conservative, I guess, in the fact that I want to see people fed. I mean, that's my heart. Well, we got people in our county that they're hungry, they're starving. And we've got the ability to get this warehouse and it be written up in a contract whereas the county would own the building if the 50C3 would ever go away. It would go back to the county. And it would be set up for the county to take in turn, if that happened, and sell it to somebody that would be wanting to set up a warehouse to do their own food service. We have had 3 52-foot freezers donated and set in place. The electrician was there last week putting those in place and getting them ready to go. We got a 40 by 40 walk-in freezer out there, or walk-in cooler, that we store stuff in. We got the USDA coming in to do inspections. We got another 20 by 20 coming. We've had tow motors, donated. It's kind of embarrassing to me. I'm living here in Putnam County, and nobody's reached out, as far as that. I mean, if some have said, send it to the old Jenkins building when the city buys that, or this, that, and the other. You have to understand, we've already made a $250,000, $350,000 investment, and I say we, I'm talking about Epicure. I'm talking about Sonny Mulford and her husband Ken, who started this over in St. Augustine. We've got people in St. Johns County that are donating money to us, to Putnam County. I mean, they're feeding us. Yes, they're a richer county.
Mr. Killebrew, I have a question for you. You had mentioned when you spoke to me, and then I'm going to turn it over. Mr. Rawls has a question for you. You had mentioned to me that the future plans of this building to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but correct me if I'm wrong, to train disabled veterans and people like that.
The part of it would be to put in, I mean, their funds are already, we've been getting grants and what have you to put in a commercial kitchen to train veterans to feed themselves better, disabled veterans, children for that matter. I mean, we have a program here in Putnam County that sends backpacks home every Friday to children. So we know there's a need. But the part of this kitchen would be to train children how to cook and take care of themselves.
That's one thing my mama taught me early in life.
Exactly.
And I'm very blessed. Mr. Rawls, you have a question for Mr. Killebrew?
Don't you guys also help support other agencies that?
Yes, that was the whole idea behind this. When Sonny and Ken got together and we found this warehouse, they just popped up and they were just like ecstatic because it's right in the middle of Putnam County. And the idea is behind it to become a distribution point. Matter of fact, today, we're distributing 50 gallons of milk to the Catholic Church so they can put it out and distribute it in their things. We give to Feed the Need. We give to Heart of Putnam. We give to the Pilgrim Church in Putnam County, in Pomona Park. They're feeding 50 people down in your district, Mr. Pickens, every Friday. They're coming and picking up food from our hub and taking it down there and distributing food. We give food to First Baptist Church in Interlochen. You know, they were, I don't know if they're doing it anymore, I can't remember, but it was like once a month or twice a month, they were picking up food and taking it there. So this is, I mean, it's benefiting the whole county, not just part of the county, not just a district, not just, you know, somebody's favorite teddy bear, you know, it's benefiting the whole county. And
Mr. Killebrew, we need to wrap up.
hopefully that the, when it becomes a bigger distribution point, it'll be distributing to St. John's, Volusia, Flagler, North Marion, Alachua, Bradford County, Clay. All the people that go around us, that'll be helping with those too. So, you know, I'm asking for, you know, like I said, I've talked to each and every personally. Y'all know what I'm asking for. I'm asking for $450,000 to help that. And it is not funds to help pay an electric bill. It's not funds to pay a water bill. It's not anything to do reoccurring bills. It's to purchase a building.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.
I got one more question for you, Ed. Talk about the innovation kits you talk about and the farmers and the excess and all that.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
But you're talking about having a kitchen over there, and then you got the farmers that always have excess.
Mm-hmm.
How does that relate?
The farmers, L&M Farms, they send us food from time to time. We get that through the USDA and other people like that. There's a farm over there in Federal Point right now, Angela, what's her name? Sorry. Worldwide Aquaponics.
Yeah.
They're donating, I mean, like several pallets of food a week to us. And they're getting food from all the farmers over there in Federal Point and that area.
So that keeps it from going to waste, is my point.
Right. I mean, that's what got this thing started, was rescuing food that would go to waste.
Right.
I mean, you know, when we get food from the grocery store and it's marked and it says use or freeze by, if they don't use it, now instead of throwing it in a dump, they're putting it in a freezer and deep freezing it. And then it gets to us, and now we've got a way to store that food with those 352-foot trailers we have out there, or freezers, I should say. We have a way to store that food. It doesn't go to our landfill and create more methane gas.
Thank you. Mr. Turner?
Ed, I think when we spoke the other day, I said this. If I didn't, I'll say it now, but I think I did. Nobody is saying anything bad about Epicure. I think it's a fine charity. I think it's a fine organization. I think you have in your heart that you want to work with Epicure. I think that makes it fine on you. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But when I sit up here, like I told you the other day, I know I did, I feel like I'm trying to be careful with the taxpayer's dollar.
I understand.
And so what I'm having to say is it does make a difference to me that if Epicure decided to ever vacate that building, that it came back to the county where they could recuperate those dollars and spend them in another area. That does make a difference to me, like we talked about the other day. Definitely makes a difference. The other day you were asking for 400, now you're looking for 450.
Well, I'm just, my mind, you know, I would put 425.
425, well, we keep negotiating, how about 375?
I'm sure when it got down to the point of purchase, you know, that's the thing is we are negotiating and trying to move as far down as we can.
Well, that does make a difference to me, for sure, that the taxpayers wouldn't, because one of my biggest concerns is that we never lump sum of that amount of money to any charity, even any charity, or nonprofit would probably be a better term for it, but any nonprofit, and then for whatever reason, and it could happen, they not be able to use that facility any longer, sell the money and take our money and go to St. Johns County and keep their facility in St. Johns County going, and then the taxpayers of Putnam County have paid to fund the one in St. Johns County. That gives me heartburn, I'm sorry. But if we could make it do that, it does make a difference in the discussion.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what they have. I mean, they've put that out to me. That
you have the authority to make that comment, because I haven't heard it from the owner.
Come, step up here.
Is she
Hang
next?
on. We got Mr. Adams that's going to want to ask a question.
She's with me.
you my
state your
name
name.
and
Go
address?
ahead, go ahead.
Sunny Mulford, 468 High Tide Drive, St. Augustine, Florida. So the last proposal that I put out was that the county would own the building. When I put for the 850,000 and the 150 for the parking lot, it was in that it was written that the county would own the building. And I will say that, you know, we haven't done all of this work over the last year and a half to leave this county. This county was always on our radar when we started it in St. Johns County, that this was the 4th poorest county in all of Florida. You guys were always on our radar. And we have worked tirelessly to bring food and resources to this county. And so we have no intention of abandoning that, our purpose here. So the food is there. We have a lot more food that we can bring here and, you know, and distribute, I guess, even expand all of our distribution operations. So we just, you know, we would love your support.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adamczak?
In the end scheme of things, I went there and volunteered a few times, and there was conversations about, you know, basically being open more days a week and people having access almost like a pantry, and then other organizations to the county being able to come in almost like a pantry-based thing, and, you know, to the soup kitchen or whatever the different agencies were, and being able to take stuff from that central repository and spread it out, just like you're kind of saying. How far along are you, and is this stopping you from moving forward with that plan? Or how far are you in that plan to being open more than the Friday distribution? And I know you guys do some one-off distributions where Ed and other people grab stuff and bring it to people when they hear of a need, but where it's more of a regular distribution.
Well, so right now, every week, we do a distribution in Palatka, and then we also do Pomona Park. Every Thursday, we operate as a hub supporting all the other agencies, so they have the ability to come to our warehouse and shop for free. That's up to them. You know, if they want to come, they can come, and they do, but they don't come every week. But that resource is available to them. We are doing the final bits of electrical work that we need to do to pass our USDA inspection. As soon as we do that, we are going to be converting to our shopping model, which is what we do in St. Augustine, where we open up like a grocery store. And it will be by appointment because we can't have our parking lot overrun with 150 cars. So we'll put 30 families through every 30 minutes. And so we'll be open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Once we build up food sources, then we will expand our hours of operation. But for right now, when we make that conversion, we'll be open 3 days a week.
So the end model gets rid of the line that goes all the way down the road, and that was my understanding when I was there, because long-term, that's not efficient. That is where my alternative location idea was in my head, just so you know. It wasn't about, it was about the traffic out.
Yeah.
At some point, something's gonna happen that could be negative.
Yes, but I will say that not owning the building at this point is hindering us because I can't get any more grant funds to do any more improvements on that property because we do not own it. So when he's talking about doing this commercial kitchen, we teach cooking classes in St. Johns County to children and 5-Star Veteran Center in Jacksonville. But I can't get anybody to give me the $75,000 I need to convert a kitchen. They're like, I'm buying it for your landlord. All the equipment that we have out there right now is something that we can take with us. If we needed to, we could sell. And so I've been able to get grants for that. I can't get a grant to repair the parking lot. We've had people, you know, get bogged down and stuck and have to get towed out of our parking lot because our parking lot's in such bad repair. So yes, it is hindering us at this point. So we do want to do more, but, you know, I can't get grant funds for anything anymore.
Sonny, if you would, excuse me, if I may, would you tell them about the other people that are wanting to set up on the property and what they're wanting to do?
Mr. Killebrew, hang on to that thought for a minute. Mr. Rawls has a question.
I just, you know, you hear us sit up here and talk about how we want to reduce the size of government, and this is an opportunity to let a civic group take over, benefit the public. I think the payback, I don't even know if we could come up with a multiplier, but it would have to be at least tenfold. So I would support the idea of giving them the money. I know that we're going to be having meetings out there over the next few weeks with the public, but I think that you guys should be at these meetings to inform the public, give the public support, or, you know, see what the public input is on it. But I personally think it's a great idea, and it goes to what we're supposed to do under 12501 line E, where it says, provide hospitals, ambulances, health and welfare programs. This falls right in line with health and welfare. Because the truth is, if the people aren't eating well, if they become sickly, if they go to the emergency room, it's just, you get this trickle down effect. So I think it's money well spent.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Mr. Pickens?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Ed, I think in one of our conversations, one of the first questions I had was if this were to take place and the building got purchased, what happens to it if it ceased to exist? So you've answered that. Who pays the bills? Where, because, 2 or 3 52-foot, coolers, you must have a tremendous electric bill. I mean, briefly, just how's your income?
Okay.
Can I
well,
say something real quick?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, she's going to give you a breakdown, but most of it is grants in St. Johns County.
Yes.
I mean, St. Johns County has really stepped up to feed us.
And
I mean, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm not trying to, I mean, that's the facts. They have really stepped up, and this lady behind me back here, Miss Stephanie, she's the one that got me involved with Epicure, and her personal self, and I'm going to embarrass her, and she probably don't want me saying this, but she stepped up and done a lot, So these are individuals from St. Johns County that are stepping up and willing to pay the bills.
Yeah. And so we get operating costs, so I say all the time that we can get grants for things. We can get grants for equipment and refrigerators and all that, but our rent and utilities are paid by individual donors. Stephanie is one of those. I myself have donated about $60,000, and so it's, my husband and I are the ones who are the safety net for the charity when we don't have enough donations. And I can't keep that up forever. At some point I need to retire, and not work 2 jobs. So, I feel like we've earned the right to ask for your support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But you didn't, you didn't tell them about what the other things that were going to be.
Mr. Turner?
I think that's the reason why we've got to make sure that if we do something, that it's a protection for the monies here, because in today's world, grants are a lot easier to get than they were in 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, and back in the days when everybody probably needed the Epicure the most of all. That's when it was the hardest to get government grants of any kind, back in the days when the economy was sagging, a lot of things were going on. So, I just think we've got to make sure that if it goes through to something along these lines, that the county's protected if they can't get recurring funds to make things work.
All right, yeah.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
I'll say that, our rent out there right now is $6,250 a month. So if we
takes a
can
big
purchase
monkey off
that,
Yeah.
what's that?
That takes a big monkey off your back.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that's significant. And so that will allow us to, repurpose some of that money, like we are desperate for a refrigerated truck out here, because last week I had to turn down 6 pallets of produce because I had no way to go get it. We have 2 trucks operating all the time, and, I've got this huge food source that has given us 40,000 pounds of food in the last 3 weeks, and I've had to turn down food from them. At the same time, when we're seeing an increased need across the board. I mean, we've grown by, 5 or 6% month over month for the last 3 months, and the need that we've seen. And so, we have the ability to keep up, but we, if we don't have the funds to do some of what we need to do, just the people will
Thank
suffer.
you. Thank you so
I
much.
got one more thing, and I'll
Have we
sit down.
been 10 minutes in
I
this
understand
3-minute
that, but I
conversation?
want her to tell y'all
Yeah.
the other things that are going on that property. I mean, that's just not the warehouse. There's some, go ahead.
Yep, so.
Why don't we do that individually again? We really need to move on. We have
Okay.
people sitting here
Well,
waiting. I think you made your point, and you made
Medical
your point
things,
well.
medical buildings, medical people coming in, giving
Gotcha.
to the poor, those things are going on
It's a
that
one-stop
property too.
shop for a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of things, and I
Thank you very much for
I
your time.
appreciate it, and I really do appreciate what you do, and you know that. Next speaker on the card, Mr. Mike Perry. Good morning, Mr. Perry.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mike Perry, 601 Reed Street, Palatka, USA. Gentlemen, I come before this honorable board on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Education Foundation of Putnam County, and in my capacity as the Executive Director of that organization. I must tell you, I'm finally I'm very happy to be here because I am finally before a forum where I do not have to explain why education is important to our county. I'll keep my presentation short because most of what I want you to know is contained in the letter which I wrote to you on September 8th. If by some chance you don't have it, I'll make sure that you do have it. I believe you do. But there are a few things you need to know. One, our foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit whose sole mission is to, quote, fund the immediate needs of our school district children and to be an advocate for positive change in the delivery of education in Putnam County, unquote. We may, in fact, need to change that because we also strive to help our teachers in our school district. While we often work in conjunction with our school district, we have an excellent superintendent, we have an excellent school board, and excellent department heads and staff. We are an independent organization. We don't answer to anyone at the district. However, we are very happy to work in conjunction with them, and we have been designated as Putnam County's Education Foundation. We are also Putnam County's member to the Florida, the Consortium of Florida Education Foundations. And one thing that does, it gives us a lot of resources to work with, but it also entitles us up to $30,000 in matching funds from the state. Now, our organization was actually founded on early education and primarily pre-K. But the way it looks, the federal government and some of the state funds are going to take over that mission from us. And it looks like it'll be fairly soon. But that's really a good thing for us because it gives us an opportunity to expand what we're doing. When I took over as the executive director of the organization, that was one of the things I really felt like we needed to do. We were just too focused on one thing when the needs are so great in our county. And so because of this, some of the things we're looking at are mentoring programs throughout the school system, tutoring programs, support and fund educational and VOTEC initiatives, I should say VOTEC initiatives, provide mini grants for teachers, establish teacher stores, support and fund agriculture and ranching programs. I mean, we're an agriculture and ranching community, but if you really look, there's very few things that are going on which really promote those sort of initiatives. Our goal is to enhance the education experience for all Putnam County students and to show everyone that you can get a quality education right here in Putnam County. And commissioners, we can do it. The problem is we're only constrained by funding. The pandemic decimated our ability to raise funds. It's hard to go to a business owner or to an individual and say, can you give us money? When they're sitting there wondering how they're going to make payroll, how they're going to stay in business, or how they're going to feed their family. So we need your help. We could use $100,000. I got to tell you, that's a lot of money. And it's humbling to sit up here and ask for that. But the need is great. We have the programs. We know what we need to do. We just need the funding. And if we can get that, we can do things that I don't think we've ever even thought of doing here in our county. I truly believe that. Out of many things I've done in my life, I think that perhaps what I'm doing now might be the most purposeful and meaningful thing I've ever done because we are helping kids. And we will be able, I will come here to this commission and I will tell you what we're doing. I will show you what we're doing because all our money will go to benefit children in this community. It won't be used for anything else. It will be used right here. It will benefit our students. It'll benefit our teachers. Our organization is in many ways.
We need to wrap up a little bit.
We're starting over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're starting over, but we have the commitment, we have the ability to get the job done. I ask you, give us the tools. We'll do the work. thank you. God bless you for your
Mr.
consideration.
Adamsack, you had a question for Mr. Perry?
So three biggest areas of concern for me from an education perspective, and you and I have talked about some of them, one mainly being third grade literacy. The district, although our graduation rates are high, that number continues to go lower, which doesn't add up. But that's a whole separate subject. But I like the idea of tutoring, maybe set up, I think where we could help you the most is giving you access to some of our buildings that we have throughout the community. Maybe if you set up a tutoring setup type thing where we can say, hey, you're gonna have teachers there or tutors there certain times of day at the Interlock Community Center down in Crescent City, somewhere, we have a facility right here behind this building, or even a room in this building. Another thing you didn't talk about is school choice. I don't like any program that's a not-for-profit that aligns only with the district and doesn't go out to our state is looking to have more choices for students and expand school choice throughout. So that is a big thing that needs to happen in Putnam County that we don't have here, that we have in other counties throughout our area, that makes us not be able to compete as well, in my opinion. Those are the two main ones, but I love what you guys are trying to do. I just think at this time, those are two areas where I would love to see an educational foundation really hone in on and focus on.
I agree with you.
Because if we lose the kids at that early age, it's hard to get them back. Just like when, you talk about rota heavers, train boys to, so you're not mending men. It's the same type of thing with education. If you don't get little kids on board and they're not at the best they can be at third grade, second grade, first grade, even before, which like you said, the state and federal government are taking care of some of the pre-K initiatives. So that takes a little bit of a burden off of what you guys were doing in the past. I'd like to see that be the focus and what you present and whatever happens.
Mr. Commissioner, we're not going to try and do it. We're going to do it. And I agree with you. The early learning and reading initiatives, if we don't instill a love of learning in our children at a young age, they're done. They're finished. They're not done and finished, but their lives are going to be difficult. Right. And there are programs, Commissioner, that from the University of Florida, that they will come over here and help us. There's other reading initiatives that we've looked at and are ready to implement that really would be of assistance to our school district and to some existing programs.
Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Mike, have y'all approached the school board yet and asked them about, they have a tranche of ARPA money too, if I understand correctly. Did you approach them about using their educational funds from their ARPA tranche of money? Julianne, don't they have money too, or no?
I know that the governor sent back one bunch of ARPA dollars or federal dollars. I do not know what they have received in addition or outside of that.
Gotcha, okay.
Commissioner Turner, I don't know what funds they have. I do routinely meet with some of the department heads and with our superintendent, and I'll certainly find out if there's something.
I think it's very admirable that y'all of what Lift Putnam started, and now the Educational Foundation is trying to rebrand and move forward and broaden their spectrum on things that when their number one reason for being is just helping the community. That's the only reason they're around. So I have a lot of respect for that. But as I've said earlier in the day, we got to be careful where this money goes, and does it help us in a very short term spurt, or does it do long term things for the citizens of the county to possibly lower taxes and do whatever. So I know that the original thing that y'all did, the state took over, and so now you're trying to expand into some things that I think are wonderful, such as VOTEC. I think that's just a critical thing for us or any other rural county. If you're not going to teach your children VOTEC education, how to weld, how to do agriculture, how to drive a nail. I don't care if you're a doctor, you still ought to be able to nail up a picture on a wall. So, I think that VOTEC education is something that has fallen somewhat by the wayside over the years, and I think that it's wonderful that that's one of y'all's goals.
Well, Commissioner, it is coming back. VOTEC is
it
coming
is.
back in this
That's
community.
because there's a lot of people pushing it,
That's
seeing
right.
where the mistakes were
And we want to be a
made.
part of that.
Yes.
And we're partnering with other people to make that possible.
One more question, Mr. Rawls, you have a statement or a question from?
More of a statement, but, so I'm going to read, one of our objectives in our proposed comprehensive plan that we're looking at passing says the county shall facilitate and participate in the coordination of economic development activities in Putnam County by fostering partnerships among educational institutions, financial institutions, government, county designated economic development representatives, utility service providers, business organizations, trade associations, not-for-profits, and others to enhance the development of a positive business, living, and working climate. I think what we've heard so far today goes to this. You and I have talked a lot about the vocational education. You know, it goes without saying that it's a need, not a want for the community. If we're going to fix anything, you know, at one point in the comprehensive plan, it talks about pushing Florida State or St. John's River State College to get a master's degree program. Well, I would challenge any master's degree person, like Commissioner Turner said, to grab a hammer and start driving nails, because being book smart is one thing, but being able to fix our community is another. And we're talking about two different things. We need adult education vocationally, and we need it for our students for post-secondary education, like you and I have talked about. You know, it's something that's important. So I don't think that your ask is too much. I think if it can get us moving in the right direction and getting that goal accomplished, it's one of our objectives, obviously. There's a goal that goes along with it. So you guys meet the intent of the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Commissioner Rawls, we intend to be around too.
Right.
We're not going to you're not going to give us money and we're going to go spend it and then we disappear. We want to be here. We want to be every year doing something and keeping this ball rolling. And I think there's going to be some things here in the future that you'll see that we're going to do exactly that. But I appreciate that too. We have to prepare people for the real world.
Right.
Thank you very much,
Thank
gentlemen.
you, Mr. Perry. All right, next speaker, Nancy Russo. Good morning.
Good morning. Nancy Russo, 330 K Larkin Drive. That's SMA Healthcare. I'm the vice president there for SMA. And I just, wanted to make a couple of comments. Due to our crisis triage and treatment unit, we are afforded the ability to see police reports for all of the mental health and substance use issues within the county, because we hope to engage those people as they come in. And we've had a drastic increase in overdoses, both accidental and completed. We've had increases in completed suicides, and we've had increases in just overall mental health crisis. I just read 4 this morning while I was sitting here. 2 were for overdoses that went to the emergency room. 1 was an adult, 1 was a juvenile, and 2 others for people who were threatening suicide. So it's not getting better, it's actually getting worse, and it's something that we are trying to do whatever we can to help with that. The jail is reaching capacity due to the DOC not accepting inmates and due to the courts not running the way they're supposed to. So there's a captive audience in there that we could be addressing with these issues with on a day-to-day basis if they had a more robust services within the jail. So I guess my request would be, when you're doing these town halls all over the county, that they're aware of some of these statistics as well, so they can make informed decisions as to where their vote may lie or where their request may lie as to where the ARPA funds are utilized.
Very good point. Thank you. Mr. Rawls?
Are you planning on being at these meetings?
I can.
You'll be able to drive that nail.
I'll try to get some more statistics. This is just something after listening this morning that I kind of threw together.
At our last meeting, there was 45 transports out of county because there's no bake rack receiving facility here. Talk about the building out there on K Larkin.
Well, there's been 2 walkthroughs, one with our director of facilities and also Commissioner Rawls through Synergy. And, there's about, let's even it off at $1 million of repairs or updates that need to be done to make it a secure facility for what we would need a crisis stabilization unit or addictions receiving facility. Right now, it's pretty open. I mean, there's no safety precautions in place. There's no safety rooms if a client were to get out of control, and all of those things are high dollar items. And then after the renovations are done, you're also looking at costly services because it requires a psychiatrist, it requires nurse practitioners that are available around the clock and registered nurses instead of LPNs. There's a lot of regulations that need to be followed to meet the requirements of those programs. So the cost to continue to run that could be anywhere between $2 and $3 million a year.
And, you know, part of our charge as commissioners is to be able to provide hospitalization. The hospital they did away with their mental health ward. I don't know what it was back when I was a paramedic. We just called it the mental ward, but whatever the appropriate term is, they don't have one now, just like they don't have labor and delivery. So, you know, it's our responsibility to provide this for the public. It's our responsibility to provide this for the public. We own the building that you guys are using, correct? The county does?
Yes.
And at one point in time, that was a recovery center, correct?
Yes.
So I think, you know, again, their ask is not out of the ordinary. I think it's something that if we start providing, Colonel Wells even said, if we take some of the pressure off them, it would also reduce their budget. So as far as the recurrent expenditures that they'll be facing, somebody's got to step up. We're required to provide it by law. Nobody's providing it, so we're shipping it out of our problems out of county, but it's not working for us. And then when our folks do come back in, they really don't have access to the services they need unless they have dependable transportation. But you know, you got food, housing, and jobs, 3 critical things that would put a person on a secure plane to be able to work towards recovery. And we've heard all that talked about today. So, you know, I got no problem with your ask. I know what it is. You know, I think we definitely need to consider that. Even if we use money out of BPP to help fund some of the opportunities going forward, because I noticed that Jeremy Ray left, but you know, with their group, the Nehemiah Project and Project Recovery, they're going to need some help as well. But this is something that we can do for our citizens, take the burden off of them and let these groups deal with it and not us as a government.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Couple things. Did I hear you say that Commissioner Rawls was on your board of directors at SMA?
No.
I just wanted to
No,
make
sir.
sure I wasn't hearing something.
She asked me for my opinion.
Okay, so is SMA a nonprofit or a for-profit organization?
We are nonprofit.
Nonprofit, okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Nancy, for coming today. That is the end of our ARPA fund. Is there anybody else that would come up and state your name? You don't need a blue card to speak to us, so I take those first, that's all.
Lori Slavin, 106 Roberts Boulevard, Satsuma. And I am the executive director of Lee Conley House, much like, and Commissioner Turner, I understand fully your passion for the community and making things available to the community. However, I would venture to guess that my passion, Nancy's passion, everyone here that is requesting funding, we have the same passion for our mission. So I get where you're coming from. And my ask is very small, $100,000. And I'm going to just be quite honest with you. I can write grants. I could get funding. I have 0 reserves. This is why it's so important, because I can move forward. There is funding available to domestic violence, but I can't fund it. It's cost reimbursement, it's federal dollars, and I can't fund it. For 2 years, I have done 0 fundraising. That is generally what we put into reserve to carry us so that I can write grants and so that we can get funding for all of the many projects that we do. I mean, I have the ability to receive funding to assist people in paying, my people in paying their rent, their electric bills, to help them establish as, you know, get job training, anything like that, to help establish them as good community people moving forward. However, I don't have the reserves in order to get them. It takes money to get money. It really does, and that's unfortunate. But there's not one single grant funder that just hands you money. It is all on receipt. It is all cost reimbursement. And without fundraising for the last 2 years, I mean, we do about $60,000 a year in fundraising. Without that, I don't have anything in the bank. I mean, I'm sweating it every 2 weeks when payroll comes due, because even my payroll is cost reimbursement. So I'm asking for $100,000. What we do for the community, I think, is far-reaching. It reaches from the West End, the South End. We have the Spanish-speaking community in both of those ends. We have hired a Spanish-speaking advocate to deal with those two ends of the county, and we are trying to get as much awareness out, and we're trying to do the best we can to assist these survivors of domestic violence, but we have to have money to do it. And so I thank you for your time and your consideration. And again, I understand that the infrastructure, the radios, I don't want to call fire department to my house and them not respond because they didn't hear my call. I think that's very important. I really do. However, I think that these other things, I think that when we went from, sorry, I'm almost finished. When we went from a couple of hundred per year to after the lockdown was opened back up, that brought us up to, we were receiving nearly 500 calls a year last year, which, you know, after people being stuck home, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of anger, a lot of people not being able to go to work, and we're seeing the after effects of it now. And we can't help these people if we don't have the money to help them.
Ms. Latham, thank you. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor.
Actually, you just addressed what I was going to say. I was going to ask you to speak about the increase of domestic violence through COVID. You know, I said a minute ago, food, housing, jobs. That's your basic bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know, it's I think impediment on us to be able to provide support for the organizations, take this off the back of government, give it to the community so you guys can do what you can do. I know your organization personally very well, and do you guys have any structural issues or any physical issues in your building that need to be addressed?
We do.
Am I leading the witness?
We do. We have what we call the back house. It is a garage that was converted. We use that for families, large families, and we use it for families with children because I don't know about y'all, but these kids grow big these days. My son is 6'8" and about 300 pounds. So so some of these kids that are 15 years old and they depend on their parent, their mother, they look like men, which is very intimidating to the women in the house. So we use the back house to house those with teenage young men that are perfectly innocent little boys, but they look like scary men, especially to a woman who has just been battered. Our back house has some mildew in it, simply because there is a leak under one of the bathrooms that we cannot afford to fix. We would love to open that back up because right now, if we have that situation, we have to send them out of county. We have to send them to a sister facility that accepts children of that age. That's unacceptable because what that tends to do is that tends to make a woman not want to leave the abusive situation, because she does not want to go out of town. She does not want to take her children out of town. And often she can't take the children out because of a DCF involvement or an impending court case. So they are stuck here in an abusive relationship because they have nowhere to go. That's unacceptable. Everybody should be able to live in a safe environment. So I would love to be able to bring someone in to fix the back house and then have it cleaned and get those repairs made and bring people back in. We're fortunate in that we do have like metal beds and things back there, so a good cleaning once the problem is fixed is all it would take. However, again, that requires money, which we do not have.
Would SHIP money qualify for that, or is it because it's a commercial nature, SHIP funding wouldn't work?
I can answer that question, Commissioner. The repairs would not qualify. However, Ms. Slavin has shown us how she has had no revenue, and loss of revenue to a nonprofit would qualify under ARPA. So that's how we could
He was
assist her.
talking about SHIP funds.
I'm talking about
Oh.
SHIP funds. Would SHIP fund qualify for the repair to the
We
commercial?
can reach out
We can
to
reach
our
out
our
that
folks who monitor and assist us with the SHIP program to see if there's a question for that, but I don't know if it will qualify.
Well, if it does, it might be a good
It w-
thing, and that way
absolutely.
they could get their house, their back thing fixed if it qualified.
If it, yeah, I agree. I'll I'll reach out
Got
to
you,
them, but
Mr.
I don't
Adams.
know if it will.
Mr. Adams, you have, no? I want to say before you leave, I know very well domestic violence. So, and the other thing I know very well is I was the president of a local 501c3 one time that the state was going to give us a huge reading and writing program, but we would have been bankrupt the first month and no way to take care of it because of the reimbursement fee. The reimbursement being 60 to 90 days out. So we couldn't grow the program. We were able to negotiate it down to half, but still, it amazes me that these programs are available, but they tie your hands to where you can't get the money, and how do they expect you to continue if you can't get the money? It boggles my mind. So I appreciate you coming today and doing that. Thank you, Ms. Slavin.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask one more question?
Yes, Mr. Ross.
Do you guys get any direct money from the county on an annual basis normally?
As a matter of fact, we have always received $9,600 from the county. However, I learned today that y'all cut us out this year. I don't know why you cut us out. You did not approve us this year. And I have been working with Lee Conley House. I started in 2004, left in 2008, went to the state, and then came back in 2017. And we have always received $9,000. The city gives us nothing. They say that they cannot afford it, although I've met with the mayor several times. It's the standard answer. However, I don't know why this year we didn't get I invoiced, and then I was told today that we were not funded. So if
So-
anybody could look into that.
That's 9,600 since 2004. It's not been increased over time?
No.
See, that's problematic in my estimation, that, this is a service that we benefit from as a community. It's nothing that I want to deal with personally as a commissioner or as a citizen. I don't have that talent in my wheelhouse. But I do think that we should be supporting this type of organization, especially because of what they provide and the fact that it meets our goals and objectives, and it meets our requirements under state statute.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you, Ms. Slavin, for coming. Anybody else want to speak on ARPA fund? Yes, sir. Please come up and state your name, address for the record.
Yes, the name is John Jackson, 129 High Ridge Road, Satsuma. I'm not very good with my public speaking.
That's
so
okay. We
forgive
work
me on
for
that.
you.
Not a big eloquent speaker. But I'm with River Park Utilities down in the west side of Putnam County. Came on board there back in the late part of 2019, and one of the things I recognized that they had a problem with trihalomethanes. So they had another company that was operating on their behalf, and after a year and a half, we took over after I got my license in the water side, and the problem is one that has grown to the point where we're now with a non-consent. We are a 501(c) as well. But we've got a consent order with the state. For violations, you're allowed 80 parts per million. We are at 153. This is not it's not a uncommon problem here in the state of Florida just by the quality of water, water quality characteristics. What a trihalomethane is a disinfection byproduct. And when you take and you add chlorine to, in our case, it's methane that's in the water that's creating our problems. Really, the reason why I'm here today is more timing than anything else. Mr. Pickens had asked me, well, what about other options? As I said, we've been given until December of 2023 to have this issue fixed, remedied. So it's all about timing is really where we're at. So we do have a viable solution. Solution was used out in Cedar Key. It's currently also being done in Palatka, and I believe another couple of water communities that are around the area. There's a young lady who has a patent on her product. It's not really that it's her product, but it's her design and the way it works. So that kind of has her in a direction that we're going. We've been working with Florida Rural Water Works. They were not able to take and help us with funding. We are USDA funded, but again, as mentioned here before, there's a lot of things that they put up with hurdles. They say, yes, there's money available, but then you have to spend this much money and you have to go through these people. I can tell you from I've been in the water and wastewater industry for many years. I did shopping malls, mega shopping malls, for about 13 years total. What has been required in the past is, using engineering firms. Those engineering firms that they used raped the community. They had them overbuild things that they didn't need, costing them a whole lot more money than they should have spent. And then they were supposed to provide oversight. They never did it. Or if they did, they turned a blind eye when they looked.
Mr. Jackson, I have a couple of questions for you. Where's your water plant located at, and how many customers do you serve?
We currently serve 416. As you guys are aware, we were talking about the public use here of land, land use. Down south of us, we have a community that was built, I guess, back in 2000, and it sat idle. I guess maybe the people had gone bankrupt, but that was tied to us. That's 275 additional dwellings that could be built.
Okay, but where's your plant located?
East River Park.
The plant itself is 131 Iowa Street is the water plant. 106 Glen Street is our waste plant.
I got it now. Thank you. Mr. Ross, you had a question?
Yes, so your issue is you're using chlorine, you're saying,
Yes.
as your sanitizer. Have you guys considered putting in ozonation or ultraviolet?
Well, ozone, UV, chlorine dioxide, there's lots of different ways of doing disinfection. The problem that you run into with those is that your ability to get a result, like if by using chlorine, you could take and go out and immediately sample, and boom, you've got a result that quick. You know that you are disinfecting your water. With ozonation, you do not have that, okay? Chlorine dioxide, while yes, you minimize a lot of the risks of creating trihalomethanes, you also create other hazards because you're having to produce that on site. So I think the most feasible is to just control what's happening with it, with the actual disinfection. A lot of people don't like chlorine. It's like people have, that's a dirty
Makes for a
word.
bad pot of coffee.
I'm sorry?
Makes for a bad pot of coffee.
Oh, and if you're anything like.
Is
coffee's
is it
gotta
that
be
your
pure.
chlorine, are you having to push your chlorine real high because your lines are long and you're getting poor sanitation at the end of the line, but you're really hot at the beginning?
I am not pushing too hot. Right now I'm hitting at about a 2.0 going out the door, leaving my plant, okay? But at the very end, I'm at a 0.2.
Oh, wow. So
So I
that's
am
part of your
right
problem.
I am right at the limit.
Yeah.
And see, I'm running it that way because that's legal, okay? You must have at least a 0.2.
Is that
at the
a
end.
well issue or is your water pipes that old?
I think well, I don't think it's all that, the pipes are that old. I've operated systems that were developed back in the early 1900s and you don't have these problems.
Okay,
I really
Mr.
think it's
Jackson,
more of a
Mr. Rawls,
quality.
why don't y'all get together after this meeting?
Sure.
Have the
Oh,
technical
yeah,
questions.
what's the ask?
Okay,
What is the ask?
yes.
400,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, you want us to fund, okay. This is an ARPA, I thought
You
this
want
was
us to
something
fund a water
different.
project.
This is ARPA funding
This is
request.
an ARPA funding project that, and like I said, it's just about the timing right now that these funds were available and when my drop dead date is.
Do you
or my-
sell your water? Do you sell your water or give it away?
No, we sell our water.
Have you guys looked at borrowing the money and offsetting the payments by increasing your water rates or covering it out of your water rates?
As I was explaining to Mr. Pickens, that would be, if I can't do anything here, that is going to be my next option, is going to have to do a rate study. We did just conduct a rate study a year and a half ago.
I think here's my concern. 400 customers, we have 73,000 customers that we have to worry about. You're in the business to make and sell water. So there should have been safeguards put in ahead of this where you would be able to have reserves. You guys having reserve money right now?
We have some reserve money as
For
required by
replacement?
USDA, right.
Okay, so I think you're a different kind of nonprofit than we've been talking to up until this morning. So I personally would have heartburn saying, here's $400,000 for 400 customers that will only service those 400. And I personally would not be in favor of taking over the utility at all. And there's a lot of these little utilities in Putnam County. And I just wouldn't want to go down that road and open that box.
Thank you, Mr. Rawls. Mr. Turner, you had your,
Actually was gonna ask the exact
Okay,
same thing.
all right.
What the hell does he want? I couldn't figure out through that whole oration what it was that he
Told you I
wanted.
wasn't good at public speaking.
no, you're fine, you're
ain't
fine.
no
We got it
problem, but
now.
I got you now. You want money to fix your water. Oh, God. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Adams, you have the floor.
So just for clarity's sake, I don't know if you've watched our meetings, but I voted no for expanding and helping our water system and sewer system. So I find it very unlikely that I would vote yes to help this particular situation, given that it's only, ours does a few thousand people, yours does a couple hundred. I don't like that 70-some thousand people fund a few thousand. I definitely wouldn't want 70-some thousand people funding a few hundred.
Well,
Even
one
if
thing,
it's ARPA money, it's still,
Jackson, we're going to wind this down.
it's
so-
still
Okay.
tax money.
Okay, Mr. Turner, you have the floor, and then we're going to end.
Well, this one here is a whole different animal than what we've talked about today too. I understand you're a 501c3 because it's advantageous for y'all to be there, but you're still in the business. You're in the business of making water and selling it for X amount of dollars, so you're in the business. That's not the same as somebody who's trying to do healthcare or education or whatever. It's just a different subject altogether, and I don't know that I can get there, because where do we draw the line? I understand, so does that mean that everybody in the county needs to go get a 501c3 everywhere in the county that wants the government money, and then walk in and say, if you fix my widget, I can sell it, it's a better widget, and I can sell it to my customers for less money? That's not what this funding's all about in my book.
right, but we're not referring to widgets, we're talking about public health.
Gotcha.
So,
Thank you, Mr.
thank you.
Jackson. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We got to
Thank you very
move
much
on.
for your
Okay, next items on the agenda, public comment and agenda items. I promised ARPA first, and now we'll go comp plan. Mr. Woodward, you filled out a blue card, so please come up and have your moment. Thank you for being patient and sitting there. And Ms. Roberts, thank you for joining us today.
Can you make comments in 3 minutes, Michael?
Did everybody else?
Oh, touche, touche.
Michael Woodward, 517 South Francis Street, Interlock.
You should have just dropped the mic, sir. We're not going to start you right now. Go right ahead.
A few months ago, Mr. Quintus over here was handed a pretty much impossible task. And that is, see if there was some way to respond to DEO's observation, which was that the density increases would contribute to urban sprawl. See if there was some way to respond to that in the comprehensive plan while still going forward with those density increases that apparently you all want. And I gotta say, he actually did find a way to tweak some things around the edges to blunt some of the urban sprawl generating effect that those density increases will have, particularly in the agricultural areas, not so much the rural residential. But really the only way to completely stop the density increases from encouraging and gendering urban sprawl is just not to do them, to leave the density the way it is in the existing comprehensive plan, and find another way to create a relief valve for the individual lot owner who has been the subject of some of your examples today. Why is urban sprawl such a bad thing, though? Why is it such a bad thing that state statute says your comprehensive plan, everybody's comprehensive plan, has to discourage it, must discourage urban sprawl, not encourage it or facilitate it? I'm not here to talk about environmental stuff. You've heard from me a couple times before on this, if you remember. I wasn't up here talking about environmental stuff. I'm talking about money. One of the reasons that, probably the main reason that urban sprawl is such a bad thing, that it has found its way into the bad column of the Florida statutes, is that it is so darn expensive for the taxpayers. It costs so much more money to provide services to residential development, whether it's one at a time or 100 at a time. It costs so much more to provide services to them when they are scattered out in rural agricultural areas. It costs so much more than what it does when they're built closer in a municipality, in an urban service area, where the services can be provided in a cost-effective manner. The deficit is made up by the rest of the tax base. So what we are talking about here is creating a situation where in the future, these increased densities will, over time, not all at once, not this year, maybe not 10 years from now, but over time, result in more and more residential development being put out in scattered rural areas at a cost to provide services that will far exceed what they will pay in taxes. And the burden of that will fall on the rest of the taxpayers. And either everybody's taxes will go up or everybody's level of service will go down. So that is what is wrong with urban sprawl. You can say it won't happen here. All I can say is it's happened everywhere else. I will say it won't happen right away, but we're talking about the potential of putting a financial hardship, a burden on the taxpayers who are maybe not us, but our children, our grandchildren, or our great-grandchildren. Because once the urban sprawl has taken place, once the density has been increased and people have taken advantage of it, either one by one or hundreds at a time, that doesn't ever go away. That drain on the tax base goes on forever.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Mr. Rawls?
Do you have, Gabriel, do you know how many Ag 2 acres we have currently? designated Ag 2?
That may have been in DEO's letter. If you'll give me just a moment, I'll take a look.
And while he's looking that up, I agree with you, but here's why I disagree with you. Having been one of those people that provided that level of service throughout the county when I worked here, we already have it. So it doesn't matter where you go in Putnam County, you already have the need in the urban areas. And you're not going to make that go away because the residents are already there, the businesses are already there. But at the same time, I think if we're only talking about the Ag 2 designation, and you know, I haven't had it quantified yet. I was actually meant to send Mr. Quintus an email last week and forgot to do it. So, live and in person, what you got?
So DEO only gave us a percentage of the total, both Ag 1 and Ag 2, and that's 60% or 59.03%.
That's combined?
Correct.
Is the majority of that 1 or 2, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't, but I think it's pretty evenly split between the two.
So I think that's a number we should come up with and then take a look what the total impact would be. I'm for a fair tax. So, you know, I would be willing to say we'll have no growth whatsoever as long as everybody pays their fair share, equal and undiminished. So it doesn't matter what your house is worth, you pay for police, fire, rescue, trash collection, and then we'll figure out roads later. But that's not what we have right now in Florida. So we do need to have some growth. And then like Commissioner Turner talks about, it's distasteful when somebody's got a large tract of land and they want to build a second home for their family out there, but they can't. I went through this with my mother-in-law where we wanted to build our house on our property. We couldn't do it. So we had to build a larger house so everybody could live under the same roof. So I think there's pluses and minuses. You know, getting wrapped up around just the urban sprawl issue is one small portion of it. When you look at total services and what's provided, we don't have a lot of ambulances right now. We don't have a lot of sheriff's deputies right now. I personally feel like our level of service is not where I would like it to be. I think it's inadequate by my standards, but that's a conversation for a later date. So I think we do need to take a look at eliminating the Ag 2. I think that the impact is not going to be anywhere near as severe, but I think we should get it quantified so as we're talking to the public on this. I personally am not in favor of this comp plan, as you heard me say earlier, for all the right reasons, but that's a whole different conversation as well. So I don't know that getting rid of the Ag 2 exemption is a bad thing for Putnam County. I really think that it's something we should take a look at doing.
Thank you. And I want to make a comment too, and I don't want to, the people that complain or contacting me, they're not living in that part of the land either. They're living in lots, smaller acreage. And you know what? I really feel like it's time for Putnam County to grow. We have 4 lanes going all the way through, with the exception of 17 going south. And I will tell you, you go to other neighboring counties and you see where these people are building and their tax base is building, and we're ready to do that. We're not going to overbuild, but I don't believe we're going to see urban sprawl like it is. Thank you very much for your attention today. And if there's anybody else that'd like to speak in the public, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.